DA was Combs' enterprise. So again, linking that enterprise to it. When we're dealing with the witness tampering, I don't think it was as strong. You're dealing with D-Rock and the messages to Mia.
Inside the courtroom, a heavy silence loomed. Witness after witness took the stand, their voices trembling as they recounted moments of pain, control, and manipulation. The prosecution painted a haunting picture of a man who, behind closed doors, wielded power not just as a businessman, but as a force of fear and control.
I don't think it was that strong. Also dealing with Jane and the recording that KK recorded Sean Combs and Jane having that conversation. The forced labor, I think it was probably...
One of the most compelling testimonies came from Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former partner. She spoke about years of alleged emotional and physical abuse, a relationship she described as both intoxicating and terrifying.
One of the weakest counts dealing with the predicate acts, and again, that's dealing with Mia and the long hours that they work, but also having put Cassie working as a sex slave, pretty much.
Cassie. It started with small things. He'd isolate me from friends, make me feel like I was nothing without him. But soon it escalated. There were nights I thought I wouldn't make it out alive. Cassie wasn't the only voice. Others stepped forward, sharing stories of coerced encounters, threats, and a lifestyle orchestrated to keep them dependent on Diddy's influence.
When you're dealing with the drug distribution, I thought that was the strongest count of the predicate acts, having to deal with racketeering conspiracy, because we know the common thread that narcotics was given to Cassie and to Jane on more than one occasion.
Investigation and indictment, March-September 2024. In March 2024, federal agents from Homeland Security conducted a series of dramatic raids across multiple properties owned by Diddy Combs in Miami, Los Angeles, and New York.
And all you have to prove is one incident within the possession with intent to distribute. You have the personal assistant saying that they were asked also to bring narcotics.
What they uncovered painted a disturbing picture. Among the items seized were electronic devices, modified AR-15s, narcotics such as GHB, ketamine, and MDMA, and an astonishing number of baby oil bottles, over 1,000. These discoveries hinted at a lifestyle and operations far removed from the glitz and glamour often associated with Diddy's public persona.
To give it to Sean Combs so it can be delivered during the freak-offs. And even Brendan Paul even said that on one occasion, Sean Combs had him try out some narcotics and just giving him the narcotics to try out.
The investigation culminated on September 16, 2024, when Diddy was arrested and formally indicted on a range of severe charges. These include allegations of racketeering conspiracy, multiple counts of female trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation for prostitution. The charges painted a portrait of systematic abuse and exploitation.
It's sufficient to meet that count.
Rena, what can you tell us about the reaction in the courtroom?
Diddy, however, maintained his innocence and pleaded not guilty to all charges. Despite offering substantial bail proposals amounting to $50 million, he was repeatedly denied release. As the legal battle loomed, he remained detained at the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center, awaiting his chance to clear his name. Trial timeline and jurors.
Well, Diane, we know that it has been very tense in that courtroom. It has been emotional. Combs yesterday, when there was a partial verdict, we saw him wiping tears from his eyes. He was slumped over.
The trial began on May 5, 2025, amid a media frenzy and intense public scrutiny. Jury selection, which concluded on May 12, was an exhaustive process. The final panel comprised 12 individuals, 8 men and 4 women, predominantly middle-aged New Yorkers.
In his chair, he was hugging his attorneys. Just a short time ago, a couple of minutes ago, we saw his family arrive back at the courthouse here. They have been here.
They were sequestered and meticulously questioned to ensure impartiality in a case that had already captivated the nation. The charges outlined in the indictment were expansive and damning. They included racketeering, human trafficking, and transportation for prostitution.
Really every single day of this trial. Now, we are told that Combs was in the courtroom this morning for about 30 minutes. He was mostly reading a book.
Each day of the trial brought heightened tension as new revelations emerged and the stakes for both Diddy and his accusers became increasingly apparent. Prosecution's case, 34 witnesses over 6 weeks.
Jotting down notes, and he spent most of the deliberations in a separate location. We are told, though, that everyone is making their way back to the courtroom. Lawyers from both sides, prosecutors are filling the front row.
Over 6.5 weeks, the prosecution meticulously laid out their case against Diddy. They called 34 witnesses to the stand, each adding their voice to a narrative of coercion, abuse, and exploitation.
Of the courtroom, the judge and the jury are not inside at this point. Before this morning, though,
The testimonies range from victims recounting personal trauma to employees detailing a culture of fear and control. One of the most anticipated moments of the trial came when Cassandra Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former girlfriend, took the stand on May 13 and 14.
Combs shared a moment with his family. He bowed his head. He led them in prayer. He said, "Bless this jury, bless my family." He told them to stay strong. They locked hands.
Cassie's testimony was both graphic and heart-wrenching. She described a decade-long relationship that was deeply abusive. According to her, Diddy orchestrated drug-fueled events he referred to as freak-offs, during which she was coerced into degrading acts. She recounted incidents where she was urinated on and forced to perform during menstruation, all under the influence of cocaine and MDMA. Her credibility was further bolstered by a 2016 video shown in court capturing Diddy assaulting her in a hotel corridor. The video left the jury visibly shaken and served as a stark reminder of the physical violence that punctuated her relationship with Diddy.
And they prayed. And he also hugged his defense attorney, Brian Steele, before heading to that separate location where he has been for most of these deliberations. So,
another witness, identified by the pseudonym Jane, testified about a 3-year relationship with Diddy, marked by coercion and physical abuse. She recounted being beaten, coerced into wearing lingerie, and forced to participate in orchestrated assault encounters while under the influence of drugs. Her testimony echoed Cassie's, reinforcing the prosecution's argument of pattern of exploitation. Former staff testimonies. During a recent high-profile trial, former staff members stepped forward to share their past experiences.
this is clearly a big moment. He's about to learn his fate that these 12 New Yorkers have decided for him.
One individual spoke about a moment that left them emotionally shaken. Another staffer recalled receiving threatening comments and described witnessing a situation involving a concerning object during a tense interaction with a well-known artist.
Bernardo, one of the things the jury asked for in one of their several notes was to look again at Cassie's testimony about that 2016
hotel and on-site observations. Hotel managers and team members also gave their input. One manager described repeated disturbances in guest rooms following high-profile visits. These included unusual messes and damage that aligned with other stories brought to court. A makeup professional also shared an incident from 2010 involving loud, distressing sounds, which were later discussed during the proceedings.
Hotel attack, that was the video. The attack was caught on surveillance of Sean Combs assaulting her, kicking her, dragging her through a hallway.
Digital records and investigative findings. Investigators revealed data obtained from devices linked to an alternate identity. These included records of over 45 private gatherings between 2021 and 2024. Testimonies were also given by individuals hired for exclusive events, some of which were reportedly documented, adding to the narrative presented by the legal team.
And they were asking to see the testimony where she testified that she had was trying to escape one of those freak-offs when he beat her and dragged her back into that hotel room.
Multimedia evidence. Jurors were shown multiple forms of supporting material, including a hallway video clip from 2016, audio recordings, financial documents, and message logs. These pieces were said to support the sequence of events being presented in court, helping clarify the timeline and context.
Do you read the tea leaves there, or what does that tell you in general, that they wanted to see that testimony again, and how critical do you think that event and that video was in this case?
Arguments from the prosecution. The legal team working on the case described the central figure as someone who used status and influence to shape others' actions. They outlined a pattern that involved control, manipulation, and inappropriate behavior in various settings. The argument extended to include questionable financial activity and disruptive incidents involving others in the industry.
Let's be clear, Diane, but for that Intercontinental video, we wouldn't be here today. I can honestly say, having been a prosecutor for
I have to
16
interrupt you.
years.
We're going to a special report with the network. Let's listen to Kira Phillips.
Arguments from the defense. The opposing legal team firmly denied the claims. They stated that any decisions made in the past were mutual and based on personal freedom. The defense questioned the motivations of certain individuals who testified, pointing out prior settlements and inconsistencies.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. We're coming on the air because the jury has now reached a full verdict in the racketeering and sex trafficking trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Jurors had the court scrambling yesterday, you may remember.
They also argued that while some behaviors may have seemed intense, they did not cross legal boundaries. The case continues to draw attention due to the complex nature of the testimonies and evidence involved.
when they sent a note to the judge saying they had reached a partial verdict on 4 of the 5 counts, but they were stuck on the remaining racketeering conspiracy charge, disturbing sexually explicit images. And during yesterday's deliberations, the jury asked for a transcript of the 2016 hotel attack that you're seeing here on your screen, showing Combs kicking and dragging Cassie in a hallway when Combs beat her and dragged her back into the room. The jury made...
Both sides have presented strong arguments, and the outcome will depend on how the jury interprets the evidence and intentions behind each event. Core argument. In closing arguments, lead prosecutor Ms. Slavic described seeing Diddy Combs as a powerful individual who doesn't take no for an answer, using his fame and influence to build and maintain a criminal network. She described a consistent pattern of violence, coercion, and manipulation carried out with help from a loyal inner circle. The prosecution focused on 2 cases, one involving Cassandra Cassie Ventura and the other involving a woman referred to as Jane, to show that these incidents, though 8 years apart, reflect a larger pattern of abuse and control.
Sean Combs is now seated at the defense table, Kira, with his attorneys. Judge Arun Subramanian has just taken the bench, instructing everyone in the courtroom to maintain decorum when the verdict is reached. It comes after about 14 hours of deliberations over 3 days, and it comes after the jury saying they had reached a unanimous verdict on 4 of 5 counts, sex trafficking and transportation for the purposes of prostitution, but had become stuck to commit crimes with him. And there were 8 to choose from. The jury would have to find that Combs agreed to commit at least 2 of those 8 so-called predicate acts. But the judge at the time did not take a partial verdict. He instructed the jury to go back at it. It was too soon to give up.
Additional accusations, including arson and bribery, were presented to support the broader criminal case. The Combs Enterprise prosecutors introduced the concept of the Combs Enterprise, a group of close staff, security, and aides who allegedly carried out Combs' personal and criminal directives. They made a distinction between this group and his legitimate business entity, Combs Enterprises. Key individuals included KK, his chief of staff described as Combs' right brain. She lived in his Miami residence, managed daily operations, and was accused of coordinating both personal and criminal tasks. Security personnel.
This was not the first time that Sean Combs has prayed in the courtroom. The judge was not on the bench. He asked the marshals for permission to speak with his family. There's an entire row in the gallery, the second row of the gallery reserved for Combs' family members, his mother, twin daughters and sons, all there, other family members in the courtroom as well. And he asked them to hold hands, bow their heads, and pray. And that's when Sean Combs asked for blessings.
In a sense, yes. So with the racketeering conspiracy, it does have a possibility of a life sentence. The reason why I say in a sense is because the sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion is a possibility whether or not RICO is met. But I think with the RICO, there's an added issue as well as to automatic forfeiture, because when you are convicted of a RICO conspiracy, the government isn't just looking to incarcerate an individual who participates, or in this case is allegedly had Sean Combs' homes and his enterprise and the bank accounts they were used for the sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution.
And Brian, talk about some of the charges that were dropped. Is it being read right now? As we are now hearing from the judge inside the courtroom.
Figures like Drak, Fahim Muhammad, and Rue were reportedly armed and deeply loyal. One alleged incident involved them confronting Sujnai and Mel's diner while carrying weapons. Assistants. Young employees were allegedly directed to handle tasks such as drug delivery or organizing private adult-themed events. Prosecutors claimed that many were unaware of the full scope of their assignments. This organization, according to the prosecution, helped Combs avoid scrutiny while committing serious offenses with increasing boldness. Racketeering conspiracy. The racketeering charges were framed as more than isolated actions. The government argued that Combs oversaw an organized group operating across state lines with clear intent and coordination.
Which lists the charges, proven, not proven, the predicate crimes, and whether Sean Combs is not guilty or guilty. On count 1, the racketeering conspiracy charge, Sean Combs has been found not guilty. not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, perhaps the most complicated charge for the jury to understand. The count one had provided for a number of predicate acts, but the jury does not have to get into that because they have found Sean Combs not guilty of leading a criminal enterprise, not guilty of racketeering conspiracy. They will now move to the other 4 counts, 2 of them on sex trafficking and on which was sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. Sean Combs has been found not guilty of sex trafficking when it comes to his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. There was a real debate that the jury heard over the course of the last 2 months, freely admitted was domestic abuse, as you saw in that video. He has been found not guilty now on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura. These charges carry a maximum penalty of up to 10 years in prison, so we do have a split verdict. Sean Combs has been found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, and we're waiting for one more count, the sex trafficking of Jane. And just now, the jury has decided that Sean Combs is not guilty of sex trafficking his former girlfriend, who testified under the pseudonym.
Prosecutors laid out 4 main points. The actions were part of a wider conspiracy. The enterprise affected both interstate and international commerce. Combs wasn't just involved, he led the operation. He committed or agreed to commit at least 2 serious crimes, including kidnapping and trafficking, to advance the group's objectives. Supporting evidence: kidnapping, 2004. The prosecution pointed to an incident where Combs and Rube allegedly abducted employee Capricorn Clark over accusations related to missing jewelry. This wasn't framed as a misunderstanding. It was described as a deliberate act of intimidation and control.
The relationships that Sean Combs had with his former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and a woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane. And Kira, those did seem to be the most evident crimes that Sean Combs committed. We heard testimony
where Sean Combs has been found guilty and non-guilty. Let's put into perspective, Brian, on time he will serve.
Kira, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this. I'm not even sure if I would say there would be an appeal, because for Sean Combs and his defense team, so at the beginning of this case, when Sean Combs was charged with sex trafficking, that is a charge that has the assumption that someone should be held pending prosecution, and was in many regards an aggressor of, if not the absolute aggressor of, and trafficking. 12 people in the Southern District of New York, or what society would believe to be trafficking in RICO, office. And their record speaks for itself. But I think in this case, they overestimated the strength of their case. And this is what happens when a jury speaks.
Well, out here now, Kira, there are, of course, a number of reporters, a number of bloggers who have been following the trial, curious onlookers, tourists, those in the park across the street.
Arson, 2012, Cassie testified that Combs once threatened to destroy Kid Cutie's car. 2 weeks before the fire, she emailed someone referencing that threat. When Cutie's Porsche was later found burned, prosecutors used this to argue that it was an orchestrated act, not a random incident. Bribery, 2016. In another case, Combs allegedly paid Eddie Garcia $100,000 to suppress a video showing an assault. Prosecutors cited this as an effort to protect his public image and prevent legal consequences. Human trafficking. Prosecutors alleged that Diddy Combs engaged in manipulation, threats, and coercion to involve individuals, including Cassie and Jane, in private events referred to as freak-offs. They presented evidence, including recorded videos and testimonies, to support claims that these actions were part of a broader pattern of control and exploitation. Taken together, the prosecution argued these weren't separate events, but pieces of a broader strategy to dominate and silence. Jury deliberations begin. On June 30, 2025, the jury began deliberating the charges. With over 100 pages of legal instructions, the early hours of discussion raised questions about key definitions, specifically around coercion and criminal intent. The presiding judge offered additional guidance. As of the end of the first day, no decision had been reached, leaving widespread anticipation about what comes next. Themes that emerged. Several major themes emerged during the trial. Celebrity and power. The prosecution claimed that Diddy's wealth and recognition allowed him to control others and avoid accountability. The defense pushed back, asserting that these were consensual adult relationships. Credibility and motive. The defense questioned the intent of key witnesses, citing financial settlements and timing of accusations. The prosecution countered with a long list of testimonies that they argued pointed to a consistent pattern of behavior. Looking ahead, the outcome of this case carries high stakes. If convicted, Combs faces a minimum of 15 years for human trafficking and potentially life in prison for racketeering, along with additional penalties tied to transportation charges. Regardless of the verdict, the trial has already sparked broader conversations about fame, abuse of power, and accountability in the entertainment industry. What's your take? As the jury continues its work, the world is watching closely. Will there be justice, or will Diddy walk free? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for continued coverage of this high-profile case. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay engaged, and let's follow this story to its conclusion.